listening to the Alchemical Tech Revolution, and I am your host, Wayne McRoy. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are around the world. Tonight, we're going to look into the reality of unacknowledged special access programs. This has to do with this whole notion of UFO disclosure that's coming up. You see, Trump made an announcement that he's going to order the appropriate departments of government to release the alien and UFO files, all hot on the heels of the release of all the Epstein documentation. And you know what, guys? We're not going to let the Epstein stuff go. So don't make any mistake in thinking that that's just going to magically go away because you're releasing something of the utmost importance here to try to overshadow that. Don't lose sight of the crimes that were revealed in the Epstein documentation. But at the same token, it is very apropos that we do talk about the reality of the nature of the unidentified flying object phenomenon, also known as the UAP phenomenon. They've tried to rebrand this and call it unidentified aerial phenomena. You see, they have a lot of different terms that they have used through the course of time to describe these different objects that have been seen in the skies and other places, and to try to come up with all different ways of covering up the fact that they know a lot more about this phenomenon than what they lead on. So, there does exist, and this has actually come to the light of day, in the congressional record, which is of utmost importance if you follow these things, the reality of these unacknowledged special access programs. Now, in recent months, this has come to be known by those who research these things as what they are calling the legacy program, or multiple legacy programs that actually sit outside the control of congressional oversight. And these unacknowledged special access programs are a reality. They are going on. It's been documented. There are those within the military-industrial complex, within the auspices of the congressional record, that have actually taken a look and tried to study and analyze what's been going on here and to try to get to the bottom of these legacy programs that they have run into from time to time. And all of these things are hidden outside the overview of Congress and of many of the offices of the intelligence and military complex that should have access to them. What's happened is they've got tied up in special access programs, unacknowledged special access programs, that have been subcontracted out to various government subcontractors, private corporations. And so, because it's a private corporation, the things that they are developing in secret with government monies, they can compartmentalize and hide it away from the oversight of those offices of officialdom that should be overseeing them. They could call it a trade secret. They could call it proprietary information and hide it from the public view. This is how they get around FOIA Act disclosures, the Freedom of Information Act. That's how they skirt that process and hide these things. So they're hidden by these various military subcontractors. And we have a program that came about in 2017 that attempted to try to trace down the roots of one of these legacy programs, and that's what we're going to discuss here tonight. Because this is a reality. This did all come to the light of day in Congress just a few short years ago, and they have been actively looking at this. And U.S. Representative Nancy Mace actually put this document out for the public. She disclosed this document for the public. It's called Immaculate Constellation. This is one of the programs that they are looking at, one of these unacknowledged special access programs. And if you think these things don't exist and these compartmentalized types of black technologies are not being developed, you've got a lot of catching up to do. Do you really honestly believe that the Pentagon lost $21 trillion and has no clue where that went? Well, if you think that, then you're mistaken. We know where this money has gone. It's gone to programs like this and to the building of infrastructure for some of these technological developments. Underground bases and things of that sort. They've been developing all of that. All of this black budget money disappears from the records of officialdom. And it goes to fund these unacknowledged special access programs. And it's only by having the proper clearance and the need to know that you get access into most of these things. But in 2017, as we discussed, a branch within the Pentagon began to try to trace down what's going on with these unacknowledged special access programs. Where is this money going? Is there really some type of a technological development going on under our nose that we have no access to and we don't know about? And they began to really delve deeply into this, and they found this Immaculate Constellation program, as it's come to be known. And this, in and of itself, revealed to those who have been looking at this and trying to get to the bottom of what's going on, they came to realize that there are special access programs of this sort going on outside of the auspices of their knowledge. That there's a group that has taken over these developments and kept it hidden away from even the topmost echelons of military intelligence and government structures. And it's all hidden away in private corporations. And that's a problem. And there's a control structure that goes beyond official governance organizations like governments and military command, chain of command, and things of this sort. There's people handling this that are not elected officials, that are not appointed officials, that are not within the auspices of military command, and they've been keeping some of their developments hidden from humanity in their study of this UAP phenomenon. Not only are they keeping the information away, but they're also keeping hidden away the fact that they have reverse engineering programs that have been going on since bare minimum the 1940s, and probably longer than that. And all of this has been carefully hidden away from the public, and it's all coming to the light of day now. And we're going to see more of this type of information in the coming days. So I wanted to put that out there, just so we can see the importance of this, because there's so many facets to this whole UFO phenomenon that has gone on through the course of decades now, that has affected people in ways that they could hardly understand or realize. And we've had a lot of technological developments as a result of these engineering programs they've undergone. So we have very real human technologies that have been developed, but there's also this unknown element out there to this UFO or UAP phenomenon, as they like to call it now. And a lot of that has to do with non-human intelligences, which they acknowledge exist and have been visiting us. Where are they from? What are their motivations? We don't really rightly know, and we suspect many things about this, and a lot of whistleblowers or alleged whistleblowers have come out through the years and dropped some heavy information on us about the nature of this. But as far as the official records that most will hold to be the true representation of officialdom for the existence of these programs, we could look at this one unacknowledged special access program called Immaculate Constellation for some answers as to what's involved with this. And we'll see that even the admissions that are made in subtle fashion in this release are startling, to say the least. So we're going to read directly from this document, and maybe I'll connect the dots back to some previous material that's been known about in the ufology community for many years, and we'll ponder what it is that we may see revealed to the public here next, based upon some of the stuff we've learned about in the past relating to this. Are they really going to exonerate all the conspiracy theorists out there? Well, maybe. There's a lot involved in this whole field of research, and it doesn't get the appropriate respect that it should get. There's a lot of people who have put their lives and their reputations on the line in researching some of this and trying to get down to the facts of what's going on with this phenomenon, because it's important, and it is a risk to not only national security, but to human security as well, if we have unknown visitors, unknown intelligences that are watching us and coming here and interfering in our skies with things going on. And they'll use the umbrella of national security always to hide this stuff away, but that only goes so far. We're coming upon the time of revelation here. We are in the time of revelation. The veil's being torn away. All of these things that have been long hidden from mankind are now coming to the light of day, and this UFO reality is part of it. Now, what can we say about this? The UFO phenomenon is a real phenomenon. It is a multifaceted phenomenon. Sometimes it is just lights in the sky that are inexplicable. Other times it's nuts and bolts technologies that can be observed and tracked and monitored. And oftentimes it outperforms any conventional type aircraft that we can develop. It goes outside the bounds of what is known in modern physics as to its operation and its principles. And what it does, it acts intelligently as if guided. And it's oftentimes misconstrued as something that it may or may not be. But it has been acknowledged that there does exist multiple programs that have studied these things, and in some cases the claim is that they've actually been able to apprehend and reverse engineer some of these real physical nuts and bolts craft. There's been a lot of whistleblower testimony that we have these reverse engineering programs and that they have actually been able to develop some things from this. Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso comes to mind. He wrote a book called The Day After Roswell, shortly before his death. And this, he revealed a lot of different things about the Roswell crash, supposedly. Now, there's some people that say that's all disinformation. I don't know. I don't have the answers to this. I've read a lot of this stuff. I've looked at a lot of the UFO disclosure material through the course of time and through the years, and I've studied this phenomenon in depth for a long time, and it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of good information and a lot of faulty information out there about what's really going on with this, and there's no way to really parse the truth out of all of it when you're an outsider. Now, there are supposedly these people from the inside that are exposing some of these legacy programs that have been going on now. And let's get right to it, just so you could understand what I'm talking about when we're speaking about unacknowledged special access programs, or this legacy program, or these legacy programs as they've come to be known. What are they? What kind of evidence do they have, and what are we talking about? Well, this is what was disclosed to the Congress in public hearings. Now, I'm sure there are other disclosures that have been given to Congress in some private forum, a SCIF or some such thing as they call it, and this is something that you require the appropriate clearance to understand and the need to know to be told some of this information. So some of the whistleblower testimony has been given privately to select members of Congress investigating this, and a lot of it is still classified and not released to the public. But what we're going to look at here is what has been disclosed to the public about this Immaculate Constellation project. So let's get right into it without further ado. That's enough of me droning on and on about this. Introduction. This document is the result of a multi-year internal investigation into the subject of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, technologies of unknown origin, TUO, and non-human intelligence, NHI. This investigation was undertaken in response to urgent and credible threats to the public good and safety of the United States of America, and provided to Congress through the UAP whistleblower mechanisms established by the Fiscal Year 23 National Defense Authorization Act and the Fiscal Year 23 National Intelligence Authorization Act. The data consulted during this investigation and summarized in this report originate from non-public data held within the executive branch of the United States government. The author obtained access to this information while pursuing their lawful duties as an employee of the Department of Defense. This public version of the author's report was reviewed and approved for public release by the Department of State, Bureau of Global Public Affairs. The results of this investigation are deeply disturbing. Elements of the U.S. executive branch have conspired to prevent the U.S. legislative branch from exercising its lawful powers of governance with respect to the UAP, TUO, and NHI issues. Going to pause for a moment. Remember, UAP means unidentified anomalous phenomena, and TUO means technologies of unknown origin, and NHI means non-human intelligence. This has all been readily admitted openly in Congress now, that these very issues are real issues. It's not science fiction. It's not conspiracy theory or conjecture. There is real evidence of all of these things, and it has been hidden for a very long time by a small select few within and around the establishment. Let's read on. The information provided by the author strongly suggests that the U.S. executive branch has been managing UAP NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. This criminal conspiracy keeps the elected government of the United States and its citizens ignorant to profound discoveries and dire threats originating from the existence of UAP, NHI, and their technologies. Going to pause for a moment here. Do you realize just how heavy this document is? This is an official document in the congressional record released to Congress because of an internal investigation, and they found that there are elements within the executive branch working with organizations outside of the bounds of government that are hiding information about UAPs, or UFOs if you want to call them that, and non-human intelligence, technologies of unknown origins. This is what they found, and this is what's being summarized in this report. Let's read on. Unambiguous evidence demonstrating the reality of UAP, non-human intelligence, and technologies of unknown origin has been made available to Congress by multiple independent UAP whistleblowers. This document is but one item of evidence brought to Congress. Much more exists and hopefully will be made available. In this public version of the report, information is organized into 7 categories of evidence, including, number 1, an unacknowledged special access program, also called a USAP. Number 2, imagery intelligence, imminent, abbreviated as human intelligence, abbreviated as HUMINT. Signals intelligence, abbreviated as SIGINT, and USG, U.S. Government Bureaucratic Records, the USG Historical Records, and other sensitive sources. All information in this report is derived from access to non-public information. Going to pause for a moment. So they went digging deep into the annals of their classified documentation, and they were able to find the existence of this legacy program, or multiple legacy programs that were developed with the primary intention of hiding what is known about the UFO phenomenon and the possible reverse engineering of UFO technologies and the existence of non-human intelligences tied to them. This is heavy. This is a heavy admission. This is a known thing. This is actual disclosure right here, but everybody missed the actual disclosure, except for a few UFO researchers on the fringe. who understood and still understand the importance of this testimony, of this Immaculate Constellation program being admitted to in the congressional record here and being investigated by the Congress. But you don't hear about it in the mainstream news, do you? Of course not. You see, the timing of all of this, I find very suspect. Now we have Trump saying he's going to call upon all of the proper channels to release everything that is known about aliens, UAP, non-human intelligence, and reverse-engineered technologies, and all of this stuff. Now, after the Epstein files came to light, you want to know why? Because it's all related. That's why. And the UFO disclosures will overshadow all of the details of the Epstein files that have come out, that have revealed to the public the unthinkable, the unimaginable, that this world is in fact run by satanic pedophiles. So in my view, I think this is the hope of the establishment releasing the UFO files at this point. It's to overshadow the Epstein files, but not only that, as you'll see, it all ties together, and this is what is really the important part here. All of this, the existence of these legacy programs, of these unacknowledged special access programs, all of this laundered money that went missing, $21 trillion that went missing in the military budget and everywhere else, well, not only does it get funneled into these special access programs and these secret developments of these technologies, but there's an entire breakaway civilization that this has been funding. And this Epstein pedophile network is part of that. And that's what people need to really get their head around. They need to understand it all ties together, it all relates, and that this is not simply just a release just to try to overshadow all the Epstein stuff and make it disappear. No. All the cards are getting put on the table because of the times we're living in. Now, they'll try their best to spin doctor their way out of this, and they'll try their best to maneuver things in a way to make the UFO disclosures overshadow the Epstein stuff, those people who control the release of these files. But it all ties together. And that's the important thing, because they have developed a type of breakaway civilization that leeches off the rest of us and has existed for a very long time. And they've developed, in secret, advanced technologies that they don't want us to know about. You see, the release of this information, if it hits all at once and the disclosures of these technologies get out and people get their hands on these technologies, it will change the world overnight. And the power structure that's in place now will collapse catastrophically overnight, and they don't want their power to collapse. They don't want to lose control. So that's why they're doing this, and that's why they're doing all of this stuff as a controlled release. You see, there's people that have been getting closer and closer to finding out their secrets for a long time now. But they can't control all of that. But what they can do is make a controlled official release like they're doing. And if they do that, they maintain the control of how this drips out into the public knowledge, into the public forum. That's what their hopes are here. They want you to be simultaneously outraged by all the Epstein disclosures, but at the same token, they don't want you to connect the dots and know that it all relates to this as well, because they want to control the narrative. They want to steer this and direct this in a way where they have plausible deniability about it. So in my view, I think what they're going to do with these UFO releases, and as I said, it does definitely tie to these pedophile networks and stuff related to Jeffrey Epstein and all of the implications that have come out because of the Epstein files. It all relates to that. But what they'll try to do is they'll try to shift the focus of blame here away from these greedy corporations and these royal family bloodlines, these elitist family bloodlines of old that have maintained grip and power on some of these things for the longest time. they'll try to redirect that attention to the non-human intelligence, the alien presence, and blame all of this on that. That is my view, that is my opinion of what they will try to do, and that is what the purpose of this release is. They'll blame it all on the aliens. Now, I know that sounds like a bridge too far for a lot of people to consider, but this does line right up with the way they like to do things. They always want to try to deflect the blame to somebody else. But what they've actually done is they have set up a sort of breakaway civilization of their own because they know there's something big coming that they can't stop. They know there's a major event coming that they can't stop, so they've been feverishly trying to develop these secret technologies and build underground bunkers and everything else so that they could ride out a catastrophic event that is coming soon, that they've known about for a long time and they've been tracking and monitoring. And of course, this all ties together with that. And they have forged their own separate civilization of sorts, as I said, breakaway civilization. That's where all this missing money goes. They operate outside the bounds of normal legal systems that the rest of us are expected to live under. They operate outside the law. That's why there's this double standard of accountability for these people. That's why, even with the release of these Epstein files, are we actually seeing anything happen? Have we seen the arrests yet? Aside from Prince Andrew, who was let go a few short hours later after his arrest. Did you know that? Did you know they let him go? He's walking free. They're supposedly investigating his misconduct in office, but they haven't done anything, and they're not going to do anything. And that's the sad part, because a lot of them are complicit in this. A lot of the people that are responsible for the investigation into these claims and these crimes are complicit, or they're somehow compromised in all of this. So they're not going to do their job, what they should rightfully do. They're going to go along to get along. That's what a lot of these folks do. You know that's true. All you have to do is look back at the COVID scamdemic they pulled off on the public to know that most people, well, they want to keep their job and keep their lifestyle intact, so they'll just go along to get along and do whatever they're told to do in order to maintain that, to keep that paycheck rolling in. It's no different for a lot of these people that are supposed to be the justice departments of the world, those holding people accountable for crimes against humanity. They're not going to do it because they're told to stand down by their higher-ups, because it runs so deep that they might get themselves in trouble in the process, and they don't want to do that. It's not worth them losing out themselves to bring these people to justice. That's the sad reality of it, but it does directly relate to this whole unacknowledged special access programs motif that goes on. It is a reality. The UFO programs and all of that stuff, there's all kinds of unacknowledged special access programs. Not necessarily all of them relating to the UAP phenomenon. No, but that's the big granddaddy of all of them. This is one of the more heavily censored topics within the offices of officialdom. They don't question the UFO thing because you get ridiculed. You get silenced, and some people have actually lost their lives pursuing these legacy programs, trying to find out what's going on within them. It's a sad state of affairs, because this is at the crux, the apex of everything going on in the world, and it all revolves around the development of these secret technologies, because what's involved with these, like I said, could be transformative and change the world overnight. Think about this. We're talking about technologies that would provide free energy to the masses. Free energy. The oil industry would collapse overnight, catastrophically. And with the collapse of the oil industry, all of the other industries that surround that would also collapse. Think about this. Think about this reality, and this is a reality. These are some of the technologies being developed in these special access programs, okay? A device about the size of a basketball, no moving parts, could power your house for eternity without creating any wasteful byproducts or anything of the sort. Electricity enough to run your entire household, unattached to a grid or a network. Think about the implications of such a device. Think about it. How would this change the world overnight? It could provide all of your needs, provide your electrical needs, power devices for free without accessing any electrical power station or anything of that. Just pulling it straight out of counter space. This is the promise of zero-point energy, as it's been called in one of its iterations. It's a natural form of energy. It's ether physics involved with this, by the way, also called field theory. There's an entire branch of physics you know nothing about that has been pursued in these secret programs and has been utilized because it gives you a more accurate assessment of how reality really works. Instead, they hand us all of this quantum theory and all of these Einsteinian principles and all of those things that step away from the existence of the ether, the portal into counter space, the drawing of pure potentiality into physicality. And there's a spiritual component to that. And that's why they keep this hidden. One of the reasons why, anyway. But all of this stuff, think about how this would transform society overnight. That's why they've kept it hidden. But let's get back to the document here, because I want to give you the real lowdown as to what is being acknowledged at this time. Now, all of the things I was just speaking about have been revealed by whistleblowers in the past who've been brave enough to come forward, but largely they've been discredited, and largely they've been shut down and shut up because those with a vested interest in maintaining their grip on power in this world don't want that information to come out. They don't want people to have access to these same technologies that they do in their little breakaway civilization of sorts. There truly is a ruling class in this world right now. And the revelation of all of this stuff is going to tip the apple cart. And they know it. That's why they've decided that they have to take control of the narrative, and they're the ones that have decided that they're going to slowly release this information, the little trickle and drip of information that we get now, rather than having it all hit at once by those from outside of their systems coming to find out these things and revealing them to the masses. That would create too much outrage and would create too much instability overnight, alter the world catastrophically, unleashing pandemonium. And they don't want that, because then they would lose their grip on power. So that's why they're going about it this way, giving us official releases of information, telling you this is all truly what's going on, this is what we know. And they always try to paint themselves as innocent bystanders in this. We didn't know this was happening. It wasn't us. And like I said, I think they'll try to use the aliens, quote unquote, as a scapegoat for all of the atrocities committed in the Epstein files. They'll say, well, we made these deals with these, what we thought were extraterrestrials at the time. We made these deals with them, and they tricked us. We didn't know what they really were. And it turns out they're some kind of evil entity, and they feed off of human beings, and we had to do these things. Otherwise, they would destroy the earth. This is the kind of thing that they may go with. Okay? I'm speculating on all of that at this point. But it seems like the logical end point they would go for with the release of these files. It's to try to deflect blame from themselves and put it on some other outside external power that we can really have very little conception of. No way to hold that power accountable. That's the key. It's a perfect deflection for them. Gives them plausible deniability in all of it. Makes them the victims rather than the perpetrators of the crimes. Do you see how brilliant this really is? And they know that most of the people out there are saying right now, look, they decided they're releasing the UFO files, and that's to overshadow the Epstein releases. That's what most people think. And a lot of people will actually get caught up in that. But it goes hand in hand. One goes along with the other. And this could be some of the reasons why. But back to the document. Enough of me rambling on. Section 1, Unacknowledged Special Access Program, Immaculate Constellation. Immaculate Constellation is an unacknowledged special access program established following the public discourse of the ATIP, or USAP programs, by Lou Elizondo in 2017. Upon disclosure to Congress, it was determined that this unacknowledged special access program and its collateral information have not been lawfully reported to Congress. I'm going to pause for a moment. So, they came out back in 2017. New York Times did an entire article. This is when that famous Tic Tac UFO photo came out and everything else. Came out that there was actually a very small military department studying the UFO phenomenon at that point, named ATIP. And Lou Elizondo was working in conjunction with this program and stumbled upon some of these legacy programs. And he wasn't given access to them. And he began to dig deeper and talk to some people he knew. And he found out more and more. And this goes beyond just Lou Elizondo. There's others who've been looking at this stuff too. And have been finding a lot of the same things. But he was actually the one who was trying to establish, hey, what's going on? Why is it that they publicly claim they haven't been studying UFOs for decades now, that Blue Book, when Project Blue Book was closed, that was it. That was the end of the U.S.'s study on this phenomenon. Even though the existence of this phenomenon in and of itself has national security implications. It's been well reported and documented through the course of time that many of these objects appeared over missile bases and everything else of the sort. You can't tell me that's not a national security interest. But they claimed they didn't have any program studying this. So Elizondo became part of this ATIP program studying this, and he found there's other programs that are unofficial, unacknowledged special access programs that have been studying this phenomenon for a long time. And what he found is this Immaculate Constellation program. And he began to bring this information forward, along with the help of other whistleblowers who claim to be a part of or adjacent to some of these special access programs, these unacknowledged special access programs. Now, many in the past would not speak up about this, because to be involved in one of these special access programs, first of all, you have to have the proper security clearance and compartmentalization authorization. And second of all, you have to have what they call need to know to be read into different aspects of these programs. And oftentimes, the portion that you're read into doesn't encapsulate the entirety of the whole operation. So you only know a little part of what goes on within it. So many through the course of time have not come forward because they signed these non-disclosure agreements. And these non-disclosure agreements oftentimes came with very hefty penalties. If you were to tell anybody anything you knew about any of this stuff, and some of those who had the audacity to actually talk, have paid the price of their lives for some of this stuff. So Elizondo found this Immaculate Constellation program and was able to get whistleblower testimony in order to suss out what this Immaculate Constellation program was all about. Now remember, this is just one of many of these legacy programs, as they've come to be known. And it seems there's one giant umbrella legacy program that overarches all of the rest of these. This Immaculate Constellation one is just a small portion thereof. So let's read back into the report. Immaculate Constellation's primary mission is collecting imagery intelligence on unidentified aerial phenomenon and ARV/RV, and it says in parentheses, reproduction vehicles, utilizing tasked and untasked U.S. military intelligence resources. And I'm going to pause for a moment here. Notice the language used in this disclosure, this public disclosure to Congress. They're saying ARV/RV, and they tell you what RV means, reproduction vehicles. But they don't address the ARV portion of this. What is this? Well, according to things I've researched and from whistleblowers that have come forward in the past, ARV means alien reproduction vehicle, or alternatively, anti-gravity research vehicle, depending upon which researchers you talk to regarding this. But ARV, this is definitely lingo attached and jargon attached to UFO programs. ARV. Now, the vast majority of people who've researched this will tell you ARV means alien reproduction vehicle. So even this portion of this document in and of itself once again harkens back to non-human intelligence being attached to this phenomenon. Right there. Even though they don't tell you blatantly in the document what the A in ARV stands for, but they do tell you the R and the V, reproduction vehicle. Let's read on. As a part of a network of special access programs linked to non-human intelligence and UAP technologies, Immaculate Constellation acts as a nexus for collecting, analyzing, and disseminating intelligence on the activities, capabilities, and locations of anomalous aerospace threats that originate from foreign or unidentified sources. Going to pause for a moment. So, Immaculate Constellation is a program that just collects intelligence about these known non-human intelligences, these UAP phenomenon, these technologies of unknown origin. It's an information gathering program. Immaculate Constellation. Now, like I said, there has been rumored to exist, in whistleblower testimony, that they exist, reverse engineering programs, and maybe we'll touch on some of that towards the end of this program. I want to touch on all of the things that were established and revealed publicly in Congress regarding the reality of unacknowledged special access programs first. Specifically, this Immaculate Constellation program. The intelligence within the Immaculate Constellation program primarily consists of high-quality imagery intelligence and collateral measurements and signatures intelligence of UAPs and ARV/RVs within Earth's atmosphere. The collection platforms involved are a blend of tasked and untasked capabilities in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, military and civilian aviation altitudes, and maritime environments. Immaculate Constellation pays particular attention to anomalous aerospace platforms that have been developed through the study or acquisition of technologies of unknown origin by foreign nations or unknown entities. I'm going to pause for a moment. They are unambiguously telling you here non-human intelligences are involved in the production and the building of some of these things, and that they have in fact retrieved some of these non-human intelligence craft and reverse-engineered portions of them. UAP and ARV/RV signatures and preferred operating areas are known to the program, enabling a degree of strategic awareness and warning. Finally, Immaculate Constellation shows that UAP and ARV/RVs are operating around the globe, often in close proximity to sensitive foreign assets and locations. The categorization of Immaculate Constellation as a parent Unacknowledged Special Access Program, with various child special access programs under its umbrella, indicates a high level of compartmentalization and secrecy. In effect, the Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent unacknowledged special access program that consolidates observations of UAP and ARV activities detected by tasked and untasked collection platforms. Sophisticated internal information security controls are a major part of the Immaculate Constellation program, which enforces compartmentalization by detecting, quarantining, and transferring UAP and RV imagery collection incidents before they are circulated within the military intelligence enterprise. Going to pause for a moment. So this collects all of the data on these UAP phenomenon and filters them and compartmentalizes them and locks them away into this unacknowledged special access program before the rest of military intelligence can even get a glimpse at it. These are the types of surveillance technologies we're looking at. The algorithm flags it, and it immediately sends it to these people first within these special access programs, and they determine what the rest of military intelligence gets to see. Isn't that concerning? When you realize this is an unacknowledged special access program, this operates outside the bounds of military security, national security, and oversight. Let's continue reading. In conclusion, Immaculate Constellation shows that the U.S. government is not only aware of UAPs and TUOs, which is technology of unknown origins, but also foreign state efforts to replicate UAP and TUO capabilities. The data within Immaculate Constellation reveals the capacity of the United States Armed Services and military intelligence community to detect, track, identify, and engage anomalous transmedium platforms. Going to pause for a moment. Transmedium platforms. This takes the reality to other stark new levels. When you're talking about transmedium platforms, this encapsulates what's also come to be known as USOs, unidentified submerged objects. Many have seen these actually exit the ocean and fly off into the sky and disappear. These are transmedium platforms. They can access underwater, they could operate underwater, they could operate in the air, and potentially in space as well. Transmedium platforms. They track these, they monitor these. To some degree or another, they've reverse engineered these things. Immaculate Constellation also demonstrates the extant capability to detect, quarantine, and transfer UAP and RV collection incidents before they are observed and circulated within the military intelligence enterprise, partially explaining why many otherwise cleared members of the military and intelligence community are unaware of UAP activities. Finally, the existence of Immaculate Constellation provides verifiable evidence of the witting participation by elements of the United States Armed Services, Defense Civil Service, and the intelligence community in a global surveillance and reconnaissance mission tasked with monitoring UAPs and ARV/RVs. Going to pause for a moment. So this program steps outside the bounds of national borders as well. It's a program that steps outside the bounds of all national governments and sovereignties. It's its own separate thing. This is an intelligence network of a breakaway civilization. Mark my words. This is only one portion of what's hidden away. We don't even know what other unacknowledged special access programs are going on out there. This is where your tax dollars disappear to, ladies and gentlemen. You really think the Pentagon lost $21 trillion? They didn't lose it. It was funneled directly into these programs and kept off the books. It's that type of sketchy accounting that many small businesses have been caught doing. The only difference is this is big time, and nobody's going to be held to account for these types of crimes, especially since these are public monies. Now, not only have they supposedly lost this $21 trillion, there's an additional $29 trillion that they've used for quote-unquote bailouts for many of these failed programs that they supposedly had spent the tax dollars for. So we're talking, in essence, $50 trillion worth of unaccounted monies that have been funneled into some of these unacknowledged special access programs. Like I said, some of them encapsulate this UAP phenomenon and the technologies derived from non-human intelligences, and some of them have been used for other things, like the building of deep underground military bases, or DUMBs as they've come to be known in the ufology community, and other things as well, and of course for the networking and trafficking of human beings and other commodities in the black market. This is where the Epstein files come in. An unacknowledged network of these people who belong to this breakaway civilization that operates with a different view of reality than we do. They have a different moral compass. They have no moral compass, really. They're a bunch of scumbags. They operate by different rules of engagement. They operate outside the laws of the regular folks. At any rate, let's get back to the document. The next portion of the document, Section 2 here, is about U.S. government imagery intelligence. We'll just read a little bit into this. I don't know how far we'll go through this to get the point across. I might skip down a little bit further in the document. There's a lot of things in here. You can access this document. Like I said, Representative Nancy Mace made it public. The U.S. government maintains imagery intelligence databases accessible to personnel with appropriate security clearances and mission need. These databases are scattered across various organizations and services, leading to a fragmented ownership structure. This dispersion complicates the timely and comprehensive gathering of imagery intelligence related to unidentified aerial phenomena. Control over access to these datasets primarily resides with the military intelligence enterprise, the combatant commands, the armed services, and individual program managers. The imagery intelligence collected from datasets available to the Department of Defense and reviewed for this report provide compelling evidence for UAP which defy prosaic explanations. There is a large number of unique imagery sensors available to the U.S. military and intelligence community, including, number 1, infrared or IR, forward-looking IR, also known as FLIR, full-motion video, thermal and still photography. The multitude of wavelengths collected by these sensors have captured UAP characteristics that are difficult or impossible to observe with the human eye alone. Subtle atmospheric effects associated with UAPs are visible through the sensors employed by the U.S. military and intelligence agencies, enabling unique analytical techniques. The verifiable chain of custody for UAP imagery intelligence collected by U.S. military assets ensures a high level of confidence in the accuracy and integrity of the data gathered. The following examples are presented, and it gives several examples of things that have been captured in all of these different ways using these different sensor networks. The first one is a cuboid formation of metallic orbs. This is just one example. There's many examples. And this information and this data is numerous. On U.S. government networks, there exists daytime FMV, that would be full motion video, and daytime FLIR footage of a formation of approximately 12 metallic orbs skimming the ocean surface at high speed before dispersing in multiple directions. The rapid and agile maneuvering of the metallic orbs were incompatible with known aerospace vehicles and were between 3 to 6 meters in diameter. In the opening segment of this footage, the approximately 12 metallic orbs flew in a tight cuboid formation. The metallic orbs were in 3 vertical square formations of approximately 4 orbs each, arranged in a 3-pronged configuration, creating the illusion of a cube shape at a distance. All the orbs were white-hot against the black cold ocean in the FLIR footage, and each sphere created a faint atmospheric distortion both around itself and as a heat shimmer contrail. The metallic orbs moved in this cube formation over the ocean for some time before rapidly breaking formation as pairs. The sensor platform lost track of most of the metallic orbs as they ascended in altitude and accelerated in speed, but maintained observation of a pair of metallic orbs, continuing the original trajectory of the larger formation. Now, that's just one of many instances of things that have been captured by these sensor networks on film, on FLIR camera, infrared, thermal camera, all of this stuff, sensors and technologies that can record things that the human eye could miss. All of this stuff. And this is one example. And this document lists several examples. I'm not going to go through all the descriptions, but this information was all presented to appropriate people in Congress. Some of them have seen the footage. Some of the footage made its way into the public, like the Tic Tac image that has become so famous now. There were also vessels positioned to collect on reproduction vehicle, according to this. Infrared footage and imagery of a grouping of vessels engaged in signal intelligence collection at night in a specific area of the Pacific Ocean. They spotted something. In this footage, which was in close proximity to the vessels, a large equilateral triangle UAP suddenly appears directly over the ships. 3 bright points are seen at each bottom corner of the UAP, which is observed to slowly rotate on its horizontal axis. This rotation partially reveals a horizontal bar of sweeping lights. Intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is a reproduction vehicle and concludes that the vessels must have been aware of the reproduction vehicle's frequent use of those coordinates due to foreign prepositioning of advanced collection assets at the exact time and place. After a brief period of hovering and slowly rotating approximately 500 to 1,000 meters above the ocean, the reproduction vehicle suddenly disappears and the footage ends. Going to pause for a moment. A triangle craft. Acknowledged here, this is a human-made technology platform. Could this be the rumored TR-3B aircraft that whistleblowers and ufologists in the 1990s exposed as part of what they call the Aurora program? The Aurora is a separate aircraft rumored to have existed and to exist. The TR-3B, there have been claims about a guy named Ed Fouché came out and actually claimed to know how the propulsion system of the vehicle works, and he has revealed some of that information. You can go back and look into this stuff. This is all stuff that has been known in the UFO community for a long time and talked about and speculated upon. There's even a patent for this particular type of craft. That's right, you could find the patent for a triangular craft. I think the U.S. Navy has that patent, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but there's an actual patent. You could find it on Google patent searches for this type of a vehicle. This is one of the known alien reproduction vehicles that human beings have made. These black triangles. There was a big wave of sightings of these black triangles in the 1990s in Europe. It was a UFO flap at the time. A lot of information out there in the UFO community about this stuff, but most people haven't taken them seriously. You can find the sightings. You can find the reports. You can find all the ancillary information about this stuff. But now here it is in a congressional revelation. They acknowledge this is a human-made reproduction vehicle. Reproduction of what, though? Another equilateral triangle UAP tails an unwitting vessel. Here's another example. On U.S. government networks, there exists infrared footage of an equilateral triangle UAP, approximately fighter jet sized, hovering less than 200 meters above a vessel in the night at a location in the Pacific. Intelligence analysis associated with this event specifies that the equilateral triangle is an ARV/RV of unknown origin. The vessel gives no signs that it is aware of the ARV/RV, maintaining altitude and bearing directly overhead. Two lights on the underside of the ARV/RV are visible, while a third is blocked from view due to a slightly upward angle of orientation. There's another one, a black triangle. There's also examples given here, and for time, we'll cut this short. I'll not go through each and every one of these images that they have. You can look up the document and read it for yourself if you're interested enough. I'll just give you a brief description. There's a large disk using clouds as concealment on one of these. A boomerang-shaped UAP observed by a pilot in a sensor suite. There's jellyfish UAP that crossed the U.S.-Mexican border on a Northcom camera. They have FLIR footage of it. These jellyfish UAPs are very interesting. Sometimes they have appendages hanging from them as well. If you've ever seen pictures of these going around on the internet, you might know what I'm talking about. But they're intriguing. They don't fit the standard description of what you would traditionally think of as a UFO. But they are nonetheless a more common one that has been emerging in recent years. There is tic-tac detected by space asset in proximity of a vessel, Southcom. And these are just some of the examples. They've reported all different sizes and shapes of these ARVs or RVs, as they call them in some instances, or unknown technologies of unknown origin. They have a lot of footage of this stuff, folks, more than they let on, because they have these surveillance sensor networks everywhere. It's all part and parcel of things going on in the world today. They have surveillance platforms everywhere, whether you realize that or not. Now, this Section 3 talks about defense human intelligence reporting. This is just more intelligence data they've been gathering. This is human intelligence. These are things reported by human observers who've seen things. And it gives a list of common UFO shapes observed in the Defense Department data set by human intelligence, by human beings. The most common shapes are sphere or orb-shaped, disc or saucer-shaped, oval or tic-tac shaped, triangular, boomerang or arrowhead-shaped, and irregular or organic-shaped are the least common ones observed here. And it gives details. These are all various sizes and details involved with them. And it has charts, actually, here that gives you some of the specifics about things that have been observed with these that are commonalities. And then it gives examples of some of these human intelligence reports about UAPs. A close encounter on a flight deck in the Pacific on active duty. On-duty flight deck crew observed a small orange-red sphere maneuvering at high altitude above the ship. Shortly after their first observation, the UAP rapidly descended from high altitude to a position directly above the flight deck, approximately 100 to 200 yards above it. And the UAP maintained altitude and matched the speed that the vessel was undergoing at a certain period. And the observing personnel reported that it altered their perceptions of time during this event. They had either lost time or diluted time. Their perception of time was askew. The UAPs appeared to emit a soft orange-red light, which bizarrely do not illuminate the ocean or the flight deck, despite the visual appearance of the intense luminosity. The surface of the UAP was observed to be dynamic, rolling like the surface of the sun. The UAP took no reported actions during the encounter, only maintaining a close in proximity to the vehicle. After an uncertain period, the UAP suddenly shot into the air, disappearing at a point high above the vessel. Observing personnel felt as if they'd snapped out of a trance and a sense of profound unease. The incident report concludes with noting that the ship had not responded in any way to what was perceived as a hostile interception by the UAP. And this is one example of many given here. There's also examples of metallic orbs intercepting a F-22. There's various examples that they cite here. Section 4 talks about the Department of Defense bureaucratic records. These are just some of the resources they use to gather data regarding this program. So let's read a little from this section. Discrepancies found throughout the internal records of AARO and ATIP and the Department of Defense interactions with Congress cast serious doubts on the integrity of the Department of Defense statements to the elected leaders of the United States government. Extant transcripts held by DoD leadership show a pattern of trivialization, obfuscation, and outright denial of UAP data in what were intended to be highly classified, private, and transparent conversations with appropriate congressional members. This same behavior also prevents critical members of Congress from receiving an accurate assessment of the national security risks posed by UAPs. So those people, to translate this, within the Department of Defense who may have some access to this information are not being forthright with it. They're attempting to obfuscate and deny the existence of this data, although here it is. They were able to get a hold of it. Some whistleblowers were able to get a hold of this data. Specific examples known to the author of this paper include, first of all, denying the existence of multiple compartmented access programs owned by a military intelligence agency which directly relate to the UAP mission, denying the existence of joint DoD and interdepartment special access programs directly related to the UAP mission, and the study of technologies of unknown origin, and finally, the denial of the existence of Immaculate Constellation by the Department of Defense representatives to appropriate congressional members and their staff. So these programs exist. They were caught. They know they exist, but they still lied about them. We're obfuscating and not being forthright with what they know. Separately, additional internal records confirm the claims of Mr. Lou Elizondo regarding ATIP's mission, activities, and findings. Additional documents support the exceptional character and credibility of Mr. Elizondo. These non-public documents include letters of commendation, service award nominations, performance promotion reviews, archived email chains, and ATIP program briefings, which directly corroborate the public statements of Mr. Elizondo. These records also provide additional insight into the activities of ATIP, the evolution of the program's findings, and its interactions with senior DoD leadership. Finally, these records provide insight into highly classified and suppressed areas of scientific research and technology development derived from the study and exploitation of UAP and non-human intelligence technologies. So Elizondo's record was thoroughly gone through. They say he's credible. They say he's trustworthy. I don't know what to make of the guy. He seems to legitimately care about this information and want to get it out there. More power to him if he could actually get some people from the inside to come out, more whistleblowers, to tell what they know and get this stuff out there. We'll see what happens now that we have the Trump administration officially demanding that those with the records disclose what they know. I don't know what we'll see come out. But there's a lot of restricted U.S. government historical records about this. That's what Section 5 here talks about. But we're not going to touch on that because we're getting low on time. So we're going to get right down to the conclusion of the paper, and then we're going to touch on a couple other aspects of this. So in conclusion here, of the paper, this disclosure of the Immaculate Constellation program, it says the official disclosure of the existence of non-human intelligences and their presence on Earth is a pivotal moment in human history. The nature of this information is of such incomparable relevance to the public good that it demands to be shared. Some may object and say that disclosure at this time poses too many risks. To them, it must be said that we will never be able to predict how individuals, families, communities, and nations will react to the revelations of such magnitude. Moving forward, we must guard against the lure of authoritarian solutions justified by expediency and appeals to national security. The good in humanity will always triumph through time, and it is in moments of crisis that our capabilities for achieving the extraordinary are discovered. Be not afraid. Scientia igne probata, veritas perfidum. That's the end of this Immaculate Constellation Program Acknowledgement paper that was submitted to Congress. The information and testimony was given to Congress in several hearings, and this was released publicly, this proclamation, and yet you won't hear about this in the mainstream press at all. At all. Now, in the early days of the release of some of this information, you may have seen David Grush on Newsmax and some of the other secondary type news outlets out there talking about what he knows. This is a whistleblower with what seems to be a credible and unimpeachable record within the intelligence community, making different claims, but of course everything he was talking about was all secondhand information. He claimed to know more, and he said he would give more details to those who had the proper clearances within Congress in private meetings. I don't know what's ever become of that. See, all of this kind of disappeared quietly into the background, but now it's once again relevant, because Trump came out on the heels of the Epstein disclosures and said, we're releasing the alien files and the UFO files because there's a lot of interest in it. And they slowly set this up. You see, I shouldn't say slowly. They very rapidly set this up. Obama goes on a podcast and says, oh yeah, the aliens are real, but they're not in Area 51 like you think they are. And that's about it. That's about all he drops. He says, I haven't seen them. And then Trump comes out in a news conference later. Somebody asks him about it. He says, oh, well, Obama shouldn't have said that. That's classified information. And Trump seemingly makes the gaffe there. And then, in order to save his own butt, at least this is in the mainstream narrative they'll hand you, that we could see. This is the impression they want to give you, is Trump was so stupid and incompetent that he made that gaffe that he said Obama shouldn't be revealing classified information. So then this gives the impression that Trump is stupid, and enough people hate him as it is, then that this wasn't planned or anything of the sort. So in order to save his own butt, now he's forced to maybe address the problem and say, okay, we're going to release the UFO files. It was all planned. These people are all on the same page. The whole political nonsense, it's all theater. All of it. If you think for a second that Obama and Trump aren't on the same page with this, you're sadly mistaken. They're all part of the big club. They're part of this breakaway civilization. And they're trying to control the release of the information and craft or steer the narrative. So, of course, they're going to call out the atrocities in the Epstein files, but you'll see they'll attach them to these UFO files in some way, shape, or form, and it'll be to deflect the blame. And they'll throw some characters under the bus in the process, but don't think any of the big players are going down. They're still in firm control of the information release at this point. So don't buy the official narratives that they hand you. You think that these people that have lied to you for generations and generations in the mainstream are now all of a sudden going to disclose all the truth to you? You're sorely mistaken. We're going to get drips and drabs of some of these things that have been discovered by others and called out by others, but who have been discredited in the past. or called tinfoil hat kooks or some such thing. And many a story was crafted on the backs of some of the real information that came forward, and it's developed into its own source of mythology, in a sense. And we have all these different stories associated with the UFO phenomenon now. But I suspect we're going to hear more about some of these unacknowledged special access programs that exist now and have existed through the course of time, and maybe they'll give us little dribs and drabs of things that were revealed in the past about these by ufologists and others. The existence of groups within the intelligence framework may come to the surface. The existence of groups that are alleged to have existed in the past, like Majestic 12 and things like that, might become part of the mainstream release here now. There's a lot of records of all of this. And a lot of these programs involve the reverse engineering of some of these UFO craft and the programs associated with them. One leak that came out, supposedly from inside the intelligence community, inside these legacy programs, is a special operations manual given the classification of magic, eyes only, magic spelled M-A-J-I-C, indicating the Majestic program. And this special operations manual has come to be known as SOM 101, Special Operations Manual 101, and it's about the retrieval of alien technology and alien beings. Crash retrievals. It's said to be a crash retrieval program. On the authenticity of this, I'm going to read from a book written by Ryan Wood. The title of this book is Magic Eyes Only. This guy has been a long-time UFO researcher. He's thoroughly vetted through many of these alleged Majestic documents, him and his father, and they've had various experts analyze these documents for authenticity. And here's what he found in regards to this particular manual, the authenticity of the Special Operations Manual. The Special Operations Manual SOM 101, 1-01, was mailed from Quillen's drugstore to Don Berliner, an author and UFO researcher, in 1994, in the form of undeveloped 35mm film. Upon development, it turned out to be a manual titled Extraterrestrial Entities and Technologies, Recovery and Disposal, dated April 1954. Clearly, the purpose was to provide instruction to recovery units about the background of this program and how to handle the parts while deceiving the public into believing that nothing important had crashed. Immediately, skeptics came forward and offered numerous claims of fakery, ranging from ad hominem attacks to the typical position that if it didn't follow the security procedures in detail, it must be phony. 3 of the critics claimed to have been involved in classified work and expected that they would have known about it. Leaving aside these largely non-constructive charges and some erroneous claims such as the use of the War Department logo being an anachronism, there were still several authentication issues raised that warranted attention. Overall, about 20 objections were raised, of which 5 have some logical merit, as summarized below. Now, these are the 5 issues that people mainly had reasonable issues with the authenticity of this manual. Number 1, there was no document control page, a missing piece for a top secret document. Number 2, personnel were encouraged to tell onlookers that it might have been a downed satellite, but the first satellite was not launched until 1957. Remember, this book is dated April of 1954. Number 3, it alludes to Area 51, which is claimed to not exist in 1954. Number 4, the document reports on shape and size measured by radar, and the old dish radars could not have accurately measured shape and size. And number 5, there is a classification restricted along with top secret, which is incompatible. So the first question asked is, where is the document control? Actually, as Don Berliner and Robert Wood were making copies of the negative, there was one that was so hard to read that Don had not run a copy of it. When a copy was made and studied, there was the document control page. It showed 8 entries over nearly 3 years, replacing or removing pages from the document. Each of these actions was accompanied with a time and date typed in, and the authority of either MJ4 or MJ1, and the initials either EWL or JRT. In addition, facing the control page is the back of the cover page with a security caveat, but it does have the equivalent of a control, in that it identified Unit KB88, Building Number 21 from Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico. This is also significant in the present abbreviation of New Mexico, as NM for the address did not occur until much later. In 1954, NMEX was common, and this is how it was abbreviated, NMEX for New Mexico rather than NM for New Mexico. The downed satellite is a possible anachronism. In the first place, the entire strategy is that of deception. It is even the title of the paragraph in question. Deceptive statements are not usually true. Furthermore, it was just one of 5 choices offered to keep nosy people away. The big argument, though, comes from those who say, why would anyone be impressed by a known false statement? Actually, most people were aware of our plans for satellites in April 1954 as a result of enormous coverage of this new space thinking. There are prominent public references to satellites before this date, including a Time magazine article just the previous month speculating on whether a satellite had already been covertly launched. So satellites were on the public's mind, and downed satellites were a very credible concept. The third objection that warrants discussion is the claim that Area 51 did not exist in 1954, and therefore the manual must be a fake. Interestingly, early responses to the SOM 1-01 by the Air Force that claimed it to be a fake had the paragraph discussing this issue blacked out, as if it was still so sensitive they didn't want to touch the topic. Actually, there is evidence that this facility was started in 1951, probably for the express purpose of having a good place to send the EBEs recovered. We have a copy of the Las Vegas Review-Journal for January 5, 1951, describing a massive construction project near Indian Springs of $300 million in 1951 dollars. This is easily enough money to build this kind of a complex. Furthermore, accompanying the article was the testimony of a local witness of the time who described the large number of construction actions going on at the time. The fourth challenge to the authenticity of this manual was that the description of the vehicles included details on the shapes and lengths with precision not possible with the 1950s kind of dish radars. 2 of the shapes, cigars, triangles, specifically referred to radar as the source of the size and shape data. Although dish radar puts out a rather wide-angle beam, the returns from the target are quite precise in time and thus distance, although angles are poorly estimated. The return from the nose of the object provides the mark at one end, and the last return before the signal drops is the end of the vehicle. Therefore, if you have several measurements, especially if you do not ignore the obvious visual information, one can make quite good estimates of size. Furthermore, the critics assume that these measurements are using ground-based radar. Aircraft had radar too, and could have measured lengths with great accuracy. There's no reason to doubt the sizes and shapes reported in the manual. The final challenge was that the restricted caveat on the cover page is not consistent with the use of top secret. Although the classification of restricted at one time existed and was lower than confidential, it was eliminated in about 1953. The word restricted can have a generic meaning, too. Access to this information is restricted to those who have both the clearance and the need to know. While this is officially true, the publisher of the manual clearly thought about making it very clear that this manual was to have extremely limited distribution. Examples of the use of restricted together with top secret do exist. One great example is a July 14, 1954 memo from Cutler to Twining changing the arrangements for an MJ-12 Special Studies Project meeting of the National Security Council. This memo came from the National Archives and is one of the few archival confirmations of the existence of MJ-12. Its classification is top secret, restricted security information. I'm going to pause for a moment here. So yes, there are in the National Archives public records available about possibly the existence of this MJ-12 organization, especially at that time. There's a whole lot behind all of this. But this is just the critique of the authenticity of this Psalm 101 manual. These are the concerns people had and why a lot of people will discredit it outright. But are we maybe going to get confirmation that it is legit? Let's continue reading here. And maybe we'll touch upon some of the things discussed in that manual before we sign off, but we are getting low on time. Other critics have shot at the authenticity early and often, but hardly a single critic has ever asked for a high-quality copy of the manual. Critics claim that if the evidence is not available in the archives, this suggests that it does not exist. It is well known that the archives have a declassification procedure that is charged with not releasing information that would be unfavorable to national security. It should be evident to anyone that if the government really wants to keep a secret, they would have no compunction about lying about the existence or non-existence of documents. Even making them disappear would clearly be expected. In the history of questioned documents, one can only establish a trail of evidence pointing to fakery. One cannot prove they are genuine, but one can prove they are fake using the techniques outlined earlier. Therefore, the onus is on him who claims fake to find the evidence for fakery rather than to say, you haven't proved them to be authentic. Failing all the tests for fakery is about as close as you can come to proving authenticity. All the claims for fakery fail the tests for the Psalm 101 manual. All of these exposures to claims of fakery have led to the creation of a summary list of what they claim are phony claims of fakery. And here's the reasons given. Number 1, government says they are fake. Number 2, there is no provenance. Number 3, archives cannot locate them. Number 4, anything can be fake today. Number 5, content is the theme of science fiction. Number 6, such secrets would have leaked out. By the way, they did, didn't they? Number 7, why would governments keep ET life secret? Well, we may be finding out more about that in the near future, ladies and gentlemen. There are 2 major clinchers, however, for the fact that the Psalm 101 manual was printed in 1954. The first is the etymology or word usage for the decade that does not apply later on. Craft tape was capitalized. Craft, K-R-A-F-T. They didn't call it duct tape at that point. It was called craft tape at that time. Screwdriver was separated into 2 words instead of 1 word. And first aid was initial caps. Was in capital letters. Now, they are craft tape, screwdriver, and first aid. The use of the proper language for the time is extremely powerful. This is evidence that this was, in fact, written in 1954 because somebody that would go through the process of faking something like this probably wouldn't have known the nuance of these particular bits of language and vernacular for that time. It would take a lot of effort to do that. Maybe there's something to it, maybe there's not. This is how disinformation works. This is how the intelligence community operates. This is an example of a leaked document. This was given to known UFO researchers. Somebody sent them film. To Don Berliner, a known UFO researcher and intelligence community asset. Somebody from inside sent him this on purpose. They let this information out at that time on purpose. And what's become of it? Largely, it's been discredited by those who've taken the time to try to scrutinize it. They'll come up with all kinds of reasons why it's got to be fake. And that's what's kind of stuck with it. That's why nobody's taken this seriously. This document's been out since the 1990s. Since 1994. People have known about this, analyzed this, done serious research into it, and have come to the conclusion that it's not fake, but you've had others that will call out bits of information like this as fake because of the nature of the information given. And largely, people don't want to accept that something like this might be true. Now, is this manual 100% real? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. The preponderance of evidence suggests that it looks like it's an official manual made at the time by those who may have access to these things. But at any rate, that is an important facet of it here, is just the language of the time was used in the writing of this, which suggests a 1954 date. Now, who was thinking about this stuff in 1954 if you were going to fake something like this? Think about that. And what would it profit them from doing so in 1954? Anyway, there's evidence here that shows that this very likely is a legit document. So what is it? It's called Psalm 101, Majestic 12 Group Special Operations Manual, Extraterrestrial Entities and Technology, Recovery and Disposal. On the front cover, it says Top Secret, Magic Eyes Only. Warning, this is a top secret, Magic Eyes Only document containing compartmentalized information essential to the national security of the United States. Eyes only access to the material herein is strictly limited to personnel possessing Magic 12 clearance level. Examination or use by unauthorized personnel is strictly forbidden and is punishable by federal law. And it does say Majestic 12 Group on the bottom. It has a little stamp on it. It says April 1954 and has some other serial numbers. And then it gives you the document page that was discussed here with the initials of the MJ4 or MJ1 designation here, with the initials of EWL or JRT in here with the dates of the removals and redactions. Then there's a table of contents. Gives you an introduction. Let's go ahead and read what's the project section 1, project purpose and goals. Number 1, scope. This manual has been prepared especially for Majestic 12 units. Its purpose is to present all aspects of Majestic 12 so authorized personnel will have a better understanding of the goals of the group, be able to more expertly deal with unidentified flying objects, extraterrestrial technology, and entities, and increase the efficiency of future operations. That is the scope of this project, and perhaps due to time constraints, I think maybe we'll roll this over into a part 2 where I will cover the Special Operations Manual 101 in detail, because it is quite a lengthy manual and there's a lot of information here. And maybe this is one of those unacknowledged special access programs that has existed in the past. Maybe there's legitimacy to it, and we may be learning more about this in the coming days. I don't have the answers. You could take it all with a grain of salt if you would like. But what we can know for sure is there was definitely the existence of this Immaculate Constellation program, and that it does track non-human intelligence and technologies of unknown origin, and alien reproduction vehicles in the language given directly to Congress in the congressional record in these meetings from whistleblowers and others. They found unacknowledged special access programs. They do exist. They are operating clandestinely outside the bounds of congressional oversight and military oversight. And they could be very important to national security and to the destiny of human beings in general. They know some things they're not revealing. These programs exist. They are present. They are still going on actively. They have been going on for a long time, and there is an entire legacy bound up in them, and that is why they have been labeled legacy programs. I suspect that this Majestic operation in the 1940s and 50s was part of this legacy program, and maybe part of the history of that program, and we have gotten some disclosures from alleged whistleblowers and those who claim to know some things about it in the past. We have documentation which has been thoroughly vetted by a lot of people. Some will call it phony, some will call it legitimate. You don't know what to believe. That's the nature of the disinformation campaigns of the intelligence community. Even these things were controlled releases. Make no mistake about that. This is how they can craft the narrative, make you believe certain things. They'll give you little bits and pieces of truth with a lot of obfuscation, and we come no closer to truth when we have this, because you have people just fighting over this now. This is what has happened in this ufology community that's grown around it. It's grown its own mythology surrounding some of these things. And you have infighting between different researchers about a lot of this stuff, and they'll argue back and forth. Well, that's not legitimate. Well, yes, it is. Well, we've used all these different tests to show that this is a legitimate document. Oh, it's a fake, it's a forgery. And you have this arguing back and forth, and it creates this little group that goes back and forth fighting with each other and not focusing on the important aspect here, the accountability aspect, because we have these unacknowledged special access programs that exist, and people need to be held to account for keeping this secret from mankind, but they're not discussing how do we go ahead and hold those people accountable for keeping this information away from the masses. Instead of talking about that, they're talking about, is it real or is it not real? You see how they control the narrative? It's very cleverly done. This is how intelligence operations work. And all of these things, as I said, are interrelated with the whole Epstein revelation. They all tie together. That's the portion they don't want you to connect the dots on. That there is a group that exists outside the bounds of national laws and borders, a breakaway civilization of sorts, of human beings that have grabbed hold of this material, of these technologies, of these developments, and have siphoned off the wealth and labor of the masses to build their own infrastructure for their own breakaway civilization, because they know about something coming that you don't. And they intend to ride that out. Probably in underground bases. And I suspect they may have wanted to get off planet. But I also suspect that they may have found that that's not necessarily possible. So, that being the case, there's various reasons for that we could discuss at another time, maybe. But at any rate, this stuff's important, and it all ties together. They've been doing some heinous things. They've created all of these underground networks, both literally and figuratively, speaking, of course, about all of these different things they've done with taxpayer money and how they've siphoned off the wealth and labor of the masses here to build this critical infrastructure for their breakaway civilization. This is the real story of what's going on. That's what all the Epstein stuff points to. That's what all the UFO stuff points to when you look at it all together. There's other researchers in the UFO topic and field that have actually vetted out a lot of this information and come to this conclusion that there is this breakaway civilization. That's the best term for it, and I think I credit Richard Dolan for coming up with that term for it. That's exactly what it is. It operates outside the bounds of the normal national sovereignties of this world. And a lot of it is tied together through the various occult secret societies. The Illuminati's a real thing, folks. Stick around a while. Things are about to get real interesting. Anyway, that's about all the time we have for tonight. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to remind you I appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll catch you next time. And I look forward to doing part 2 covering the Psalm 101 manual. We'll catch you later. Thanks for listening.